Yakuza 0. Before its release in 2017, Sega had already released 5 other Yakuza games over nearly 10 years, as well as several spin-offs that were only released in Japan. I'm sure there are others besides myself who had considered jumping into this series by starting with Yakuza on PS2, but with the release of Yakuza 0, Sega has given this series a new chance to shine in North America by allowing new players to jump into the series with a game that chronologically takes place before the main series. Plus, the original Yakuza on PS2 was remade and re-released in the same year as Yakuza 0, which means now there might no longer be any point in trying out the original from 2006. Welcome to another episode of the Backlogger. My name is Joe. Today I'm doing another game review from my enormous gaming backlog. And today's game is Yakuza 0. Let's dive into it. Yakuza 0 is a massive game with so much to do. The North American release only came out on PlayStation 4, but the Japanese release came out on PlayStation 3 as well as PlayStation 4. So on a graphical level, it wasn't necessarily this next generation style game, and it appears that it was mainly made to run on older hardware. But it looks great. I especially love how much detail was put into the Japanese city setting. Everything around you in this city feels so lifelike. With the wonderful attention to detail put into creating the city, it really makes you feel like you're wandering the streets of Japan. In Yakuza 0, you play as Kazuma Kiryu, who I'll refer to as Kiryu. Kiryu is a young guy who's been a part of the Yakuza for most of his life. In the first chapter of the story, he soon finds himself framed for murder after returning from a mission involving collecting money. This accusation causes much tension between Kiryu and his bosses, as well as his best friend and sworn brother, Akira Nishikiyama. And things just kinda get worse and more interesting from that point on. Yakuza 0's story is split into 17 long but exciting chapters, and after the first 2 chapters, you start playing as another character named Goro Mashima, who I'll refer to as Mashima. Mashima has a different goal of his own. He is an ex-Yakuza member who frequently communicates with his previous boss, Tsukasa Sagawa, and is desperate for his help to let him back into the Yakuza family after being kicked out many years ago. Similar to Kiryu's situation, things don't work out too well for him either, as the choices he makes lead to some complicated situations. I don't know how this game managed to suck me in so quickly and make me care about 2 characters right off the bat, but I was in, and I was very much looking forward to seeing where this story would go. After playing the first 2 chapters, I was already very invested in Kiryu's story, and by the time Mashima comes in, I felt like it wasn't necessary for a game like this to have you swapping between 2 characters throughout the game. But I actually found Mashima to be an even more intriguing character, so I quickly accepted that this is just how the game would be. Yakuza 0's entire story could easily be a TV series, and that's what they make it feel like. Each chapter is basically an episode of a season, and after you finish the first 2 chapters with a character, it always ends on a cliffhanger. So you're always left with anticipation to see what will happen next in that character's story. As much as I love the open world gameplay, combat, and activities in this game, I think the story is what will stick out to me the most. I would honestly put this game's story pretty high on the list of one of the best you'll see in a video game. While it doesn't quite reach some of my favorite storylines like Metal Gear Solid or Mass Effect or Last of Us, it's pretty close, and it's so worth playing for it. And Yakuza 0's storytelling is similar to Metal Gear Solid's, where it has no issue taking time to provide you with long cutscenes and character conversations to keep you invested in the story and develop the characters. It's an emotionally intense ride, but it's also full of humor and fun. As you play through, you'll find yourself doing all sorts of Yakuza-style things, but no matter how crazy things get, there's always time for some side activities. And seriously, there are so many side activities in this game. From bowling, fishing, karaoke, dancing, batting, gambling, real estate, space battles. Okay, fine, that one's not real, but with how ridiculous and crazy this game can get, it never would have surprised me if space battles came in. But really, there are plenty of random activities you can do. I mean, what better thing to do than hit up the arcade while you're being chased down by large groups of criminals in a very small town where they are likely to find you? Or what better thing to do than sing some karaoke while your friend is being tortured somewhere else in the city? The game is silly in that way, where no matter how serious things are in the main story, you almost always have the option of doing side activities to increase your abilities. What's even more interesting about Yakuza 0 is that it probably has some of the most intriguing side missions in any game. I really could not believe some of the side missions I was asked to do by some of these NPCs. The short stories contained within these missions can even throw you some small twists that you won't see coming. While I haven't finished all of them yet, I will definitely return to Yakuza 0 to do more that I missed out on. Even after 60 hours of playtime, there is still plenty more for me to do in Yakuza 0. Many open-world games over the last couple of decades, like the Red Dead series, Mafia, Watch Dogs, and many others, always try to impress us with these open-world maps and saying that they're so much bigger than previously released open-world games, but bigger isn't always better. Games like The Witcher 3 would come out and the developers would be like, oh hey, our open-world map is twice the size of Skyrim. Okay, I don't think they actually said that, but they would always try to impress us with these huge open-world maps, but Yakuza 0 takes a different approach and puts you in a more concealed, claustrophobic even, setting and gives you more activities to do. Yakuza 0 isn't trying to impress anyone with its size, and it probably has the smallest open world map you'll ever see, but you soon realize that you can have just as much fun in this game as you can in Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption. The game focuses more on the quality of the activities, not a focus on a huge map with lots of empty space. As much as I love Yakuza 0's narrative, it sometimes was very hard to decide if I wanted to continue the amazing story or if I wanted to distract myself for hours with all of these side activities. Plus, nearly everything you do in this game is beneficial to your character's growth and abilities, so time is hardly ever wasted. The minigames are also designed well and likely took a lot of time to get right. For example, when playing bowling, there's actually a bit of skill when it comes to deciding where to place the ball, what speed to roll it at, and how much spin to put on it. Now I want to talk about the combat. The combat in this game feels a bit dated, or rather old school, compared to games like Assassin's Creed or Batman Arkham games, but man, is it fun. The combat seems a bit flawed in a sense, where it's a bit difficult trying to transfer your attacks from one enemy to the next, and it's almost impossible to walk away from most fights without an enemy getting at least one or two cheap hits. But your skills will improve over time, and 3 different fighting styles for each character provide you with different ways to come out on top. One thing I couldn't figure out is how exactly I managed to get better at the combat. What I mean is, early on in the first 5 hours of the game, there were times where I got destroyed by enemies. I mean, look at all these hits. Yeah, I sucked at times and couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. At some point, I managed to start coming out on top with little damage for a lot of fights. I really don't even know what I did differently by that point. Perhaps I was able to use quicker and stronger moves I hadn't really noticed before. And maybe I moved around more often and tried focusing on taking on enemies that were further away from the rest of the group. Not quite sure. I think part of doing combat is realizing that you can't always rely on your fists. Certain situations are different. Picking up a random object off the street and bashing enemies with it reminded me a lot of Dead Rising. It has a very similar feel to it. The most frustrating thing I could never quite grasp were some of the boss battles. These were the trickiest part, because it's often very difficult to figure out how to properly get a punch or two on the boss without getting hit back. It takes more patience and a deeper understanding of the boss's moves, and I still don't know if there is a specific strategy for handling each boss. I felt like luck played a fairly big role at times, which is really the only thing that really bothered me about Yakuza 0. Perhaps I'll find these fights easier to manage if I ever decide to do a second playthrough, which I'm very much planning on doing at some point. I might even go for 100% completion and getting the Platinum Trophy. It will be a long road, but I think it'll be a lot of fun if I decide to pursue the trophy. So, should you add Yakuza 0 to your gaming backlog? The more I think about this game and realize how much fun I had with it, the more I really want to go back and complete it and do a second playthrough. It's just so much fun. But for my first playthrough for now, I just wanted to make sure I gave a fair shot to all of the side activities, got through the main story, as well as many sub-stories as I could as well. The gameplay itself is a great reason to play because you'll have so much fun with the side activities and the combat, and with an amazing story put on top of it all, I really can't recommend this game enough. And Yakuza 0 certainly deserves an A. Absolutely backlog. So I've seen a bit of debate on the internet on whether you should play Yakuza 0 or Yakuza Kiwami first. As of right now, I've only played 4 hours of Kiwami, but so far I feel pretty happy that I started with 0. I might change my mind by the time I do a review for Kiwami, but I feel like the story in this series is a type of story where you're not going to want to go back and see what happened. Right now, I only want to see what happens next in Kiryu's story. Also, when you start Yakuza Kiwami, you see all of these characters almost right away from the previous game, and so you're not really connected to anyone. So if you play Yakuza 0 first, you'll get to know all of these characters, and you'll have that connection with them by the time you play Kiwami. I've heard that some people actually do like playing Kiwami first before 0. I think it's really just your own personal preference, because in Kiwami, the characters will behave a certain way, and you can go backwards and see how those characters got to that point. But I feel like if you play Kiwami first, then it's just gonna kind of make 0 not all that interesting, because you'll know where the characters will go. You'll know who's gonna survive, what's gonna happen. I just feel like it's kind of more of a spoiler. I don't know. You could play Kiwami first, but for now, I'm going with 0. Yakuza 0 came out before Kiwami, so I go in order of release date. That's just me. Alright, viewers, now I want to hear from you. Have you played or are you interested in the Yakuza series at all? Also, do you think it's better to start with Yakuza 0 or Kiwami if you've already played the games? Go ahead and discuss in the comments below. Also, if you like this video, you can subscribe to this channel for more gaming backlog reviews I do. Your support is appreciated. Thank you so much for watching my video review for Yakuza 0. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, keep on backlogging.